Hey everyone, this is Wyatt Jackson here,
And I'm Devon Marshall.
and today you're listening to Adventures into Odyssey. Hey everyone, this is Wyatt Jackson here, and I'm back with my friend, or my new co-host, I should say, Devon Marshall, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think what we've decided with this podcast is we're just going to do what we can with it, and hopefully keep lots of these episodes coming out, but
Yeah.
yeah. And we'll hopefully do as many of these together as we can, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, maybe there's some times where you won't be here, but, then I'll just do it on my own again, like I used to, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're back with the next episode of the Leonard Meltsner Saga. This is episode 595, A Time for Action, Part 2. And it was written by Nathan Hubler, and it originally aired May 13th, 2006. And we have pretty much the same cast we did last episode. We got Eugene Meltsner, voiced by Will Ryan. We got John Whitaker, voiced by Paul Herlinger. We got Christy McKay, or Mom, as I refer to her in my notes, voiced by Julianne Boescher. We got Grady McKay, the annoying kid, voiced by Jordan Orr. And we got both Don Winters and Joel, voiced by Phil Proctor, the guy who voices Detective Don Polhouse in Modern Odyssey. And we got PJ Manning, voiced by Scott Menville. So we got one more character than last episode, but it's just still a pretty small episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is also the first episode we actually hear Leonard Meltsner, because spoiler alert, it's Joel. It was never really a big surprise. So yeah.
Well,
so
we heard him at the end of
yeah.
Dead Ends? Is that right?
Yes, we heard him at Dead Ends, but yeah, we didn't know it was him.
No.
Okay, my mistake. I stand corrected. Okay. And we get great intro music too. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
It was very Novacom-esque style intro music.
Sure.
Just brought back lots of those memories of like battle lines and all that. The electric guitar. Plan B, those are the days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the episode. We should roll the promo. I almost forgot.
Closer than ever to their goal, Eugene and Whit scour their clues and multiple cities in an effort to find any connection to Leonard Meltsner. But the most crucial piece to their puzzle lies where they least expect it. It's a conclusion you'll have to hear on the next Adventures in Odyssey.
What?
Yeah.
Those promos are so bad.
Yeah, they really are quite cringe.
Like, the music and stuff is just terrible. It sounds like
Did you notice
stuff.
Yeah, the circus music. What? Like, what's going on? And the steamship. Did you notice the steamship?
Yeah, it's just...
Yeah, it's bad,
it's
all
too
right.
Much.
This is another... Yeah. Okay, I really hope that they get better with their promos, because, these are just really bad, I have to say.
I think the newer ones are better, but I don't know. I haven't listened
No,
to
the
much.
newer ones are just Chris. It's just Chris, talking.
Okay.
And that's at least, not cringy.
Yeah.
But some of their older ones, like the Novacom ones, they're just really bad in general.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, we're done talking about this. It was a bad promo. Don't listen to it. Yeah. So, I guess this means we can start talking about the episode now.
Mm-hmm.
So, scene 1 picks up right where the last one left off. And, it's Whit and Eugene in Whit's office in Whit's End.
Yeah.
And so Whit's explaining to Eugene about his hunch, because remember, we left off the last episode when Wit's like, I think I have a hunch, but we never actually heard it, but this is Wit explaining. And so Wit looked closer at both the fax numbers, and the original fax didn't really match up with the fax the appropriately named Around the World mission sent Eugene. Mm-hmm. And so basically, Leonard Meltsner sent a fax to Around the World missions, and then when Around the World missions sent that fax to Eugene, his original number was erased, but then Martin sent the original fax back to Eugene, and it had a different number. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, Eugene didn't notice this, and Wit just noticed it. And so Eugene's looking at the fax number. He's like, oh, it's a Connellsville number. Gasp, gasp. But Wit's like, Eugene, that fax was sent more than a year ago.
Yeah.
And, yeah, Eugene's like, oh, well... there's only one thing to do. And then he picks up the phone and he just calls it, which, bad idea, but whatever. Who cares? And then, oh yeah. And then we get the worst gas station employee ever. PJ Manning.
Great guy.
And, oh yeah, this guy is just the worst ever.
But it's not his first appearance, though.
No, this is the second episode he's been in.
Because he was in And That's the Truth from Along the Ride.
Yes, that's right. And then he's in Bodyguard, which is, I think, a few albums after this one.
Yeah, that's in The Sky's the Limit.
The Sky's the Limit, that's right. I have that album, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good episode.
It is.
But anyway, we're not going on a rabbit trail like that. So, PJ and Eugene's surprised to hear someone. Eugene's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting anyone to pick up. This is like a fax machine. And then PJ has this so funny quote. I wrote it down. He's like, oh, coolness, man. I do the same thing all the time. Call and talk to fax machines. And then Eugene gets really he's starting to get annoyed, and Eugene's like, young man, I have a question. And then PJ just cuts him off, and he's like, okay, look, I gotta let you go because my girlfriend is, on the line, and she gets really angry. And then he just proceeds to hang up on Eugene.
Yeah.
Which is...
very professional.
First of all, this is a phone that your boss is paying for. It's for, business matters only, not for talking to your girlfriend. And, second of all, he's being paid for all this time. He's talking to his girlfriend, so,
yeah.
Yeah, it's really bad looks really bad on PJ's part.
It's true.
So, yeah. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, sick, my notes are all kind of, messed up a little, so, yeah. Sick, okay, so, before PJ hangs up, PJ, asks, because Eugene asked for info about the person who sent the fax a year ago. Sorry, I completely messed this up. So Eugene calls, PJ tells him that they use the same line for the fax and phone. And then Eugene's like, well, I want to know about a person who sent the fax a year ago. And so PJ's like, well, what does he look like? And Eugene's like, okay, he's tall, handsome, rugged, and adventurous. And Wit's like, oh, great. and then that's when PJ hangs up. Because his girlfriend's getting mad.
A handsome man, rugged and adventurous with brown hair and a mustache.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I just love Wit. He's like, oh, here we go again.
Wit's just got such a great attitude in these adventures.
Yeah. He's really good.
Yeah.
And then PJ hangs up because his girlfriend gets really angry that he's doing a job or something. And then, so Eugene calls back, PJ answers, and then just hangs up.
Yeah.
And, so Wit's... oh, no, he puts him on hold. And then Eugene's like, well, we're going to be here for a long time. And Wit's like, well, yeah, or we could just go. And Eugene's like, good idea. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go to the next scene, which is Grady's house. And Grady is still having a fit that his church gave him the box. And I just wrote down that Eugene really messed up this order big time.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But, like, Grady, though, he's like, we shouldn't have to be adopted. Ah!
I know. And his mom's like, Grady, well, we're poor. We're not as poor as some. And then Grady's like, let's get rid of this stuff. And when I first heard it, I was like, wait a minute, is he like, throw it out?
Yeah, no.
But then he means like, just give it to like the homeless guy. And his mom's pretty cool about it. She's like, okay, pick a few things and we'll give it to him. And Grady's like, not all. His mom's like, no discussion on this. He's like, fine. So, at least he didn't really put up a fight.
No.
And then she says she'll drive him, and Grady's like, why can't I give it to him? It's like, Grady, don't go down that thing again. Just be grateful your mom hasn't grounded you, like, you know, for talking to homeless people. Yeah.
But, like, one thing that, like, that really bothers me in this episode is that when Grady asks his mom why he can't talk to strangers, she's like, you'll understand when you're older. And that just, like, oh, man, it's, like, it kind of mildly infuriates me because, like, she evades all of his questions.
Yeah. It's like she doesn't want to answer them. Oh, man. Yeah, that is kind of bad. It's kind of like she doesn't really want to tell him why, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. We don't get as much Grady and his mom in this episode. It's just this scene and, like a scene way further down, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But from that kind of low point in the show, we go to one of the best scenes in this episode, for comedy, that is. And it's Pete's Gas and Chow in Connellsville. And so Wyatt and Eugene come into this gas station, and PJ is apparently on the line with his girlfriend, Adrian, and it appears that she's pretty mad at him. I can just imagine her being like, you don't even want to talk to me. And he's like, no. I could listen to your voice for hours. And then Eugene comes in and he starts yelling at PJ. He's like, PJ, I need assistance here. Hello. And PJ's like, yeah, you'll have to wait. It's like, this is urgent. And then Eugene's like, this is urgent. And PJ's like, and then Adrian apparently gets really mad at PJ. He's like, no, it's just a customer. Don't get mad at me, you know?
Yeah.
And then Eugene just snatches the phone from PJ, and he's like, Adrian, hello, PJ's a fortunate man, but he has to go now. Yes, this is an emergency. Slam.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just like
nice one on Eugene.
tells Yeah. It's just really funny because and then Eugene says, lovely girl. But PJ is pretty mad about this, but because apparently this is a long distance call. But then Eugene's like, I'll pay, which
why would he
he
pay?
apparently does. I don't know. But anyway, he offers to pay, but if PJ will like look at this fax, and so PJ's pretty mad, but he takes it and he's like, and the fax was sent from Cairo, which, wait a minute, I thought it was sent from Johannesburg. Because, like, wasn't the fax, that was the big deal about it being sent from Johannesburg instead of, like...
Yeah, not Connellsville, it's from Johannesburg. That's kind of weird.
No, Joel sent the fax from Connellsville to Round the World Missions, who routed it
From
to Johannesburg.
Okay.
Johannesburg, but this episode listed as Cairo, so... This is really, it's confusing. It's really confusing. I don't know. Okay. So anyway, moving on. So Eugene, so PJ remembers this man from like a year ago, and it was right when PJ started working at this gas station. And Eugene's getting his hopes up. He's like, did this man look like a tall, handsome, rugged, and adventurous? And PJ's like, no, Joel is homeless. And Eugene's like, Joel, not Leonard Meltsner? Oh. And this is my biggest beef with this episode. The whole time, it does not come into Whit or Eugene's minds that Joel might be his father.
No.
Like, they're like, well, maybe your father, like, hired Joel to send this fax or something like that.
Or your father was Joel.
I mean, it's so stupid. The whole time they're like, and I mean, Eugene hasn't seen his father in 20 years, so he could have definitely put on some weight and, like shaved his, or grew a beard and,
had dreadlocks.
Changed. Yeah. I mean, 20 years, you can change a lot, so why is Eugene, like, so, like, I don't know.
Just can't picture his dad that way with dreadlocks and a beard.
Probably not. Yeah, definitely not. So, anyway. So, PJ describes Joel as the opposite to Eugene. A big man in his 50s with dreadlocks. And PJ remembers Joel because it was so unusual that homeless people would send a fax to Cairo. Mm-hmm. And Eugene's, like, really disappointed, and he asks PJ if there's anything else. But PJ's like, no, he just wanted to send a fax for someone. And Eugene's like, for someone. And then, yeah, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
And then PJ's like, all right, you're done. Pay up for my long-distance call. And then Eugene's like, uh-oh, I don't have any cash on me. And then he's like, do you take credit cards? And PJ's like, credit cards? Dude, I'm a teenager. And then it just ends, like, the scene. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wait a minute, how does Eugene pay? Maybe Whit just, like, pays him. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because Whit's just, like, standing there awkwardly. Eugene, I have a few loonies in my pockets.
Whit doesn't honestly say much throughout this scene.
No, he doesn't. Actually, I don't think he says anything.
He says, ancient or something like that.
Oh, yes, because PJ's describing Leonard Meltsner as being in his 50s. He's like, he's super old, like in his 50s, and Whit's like, must have been ancient.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
But I think that's about all he said in that whole scene.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet from Whit, so. Mm-hmm. Then we go to Whit's car, and Eugene is thinking that his father didn't send the fax after all. Eugene, doesn't it occur to you that Joel might just be like your father after 20 years? Like, okay. And then Whit, he's just as stupid as Eugene in this scene because he's like, well, maybe your father asked Joel to send the fax. It's like, Whit, you're both so stupid. It's Leonard.
Yeah.
And then, because Whit's like, well, there's the homeless shelter down the street that Joel is if he's homeless, he'd probably be like in that homeless shelter. Mm-hmm. And Whit knows the director, Don Winters, and Eugene's surprised at this. He's like, whoa, why am I not surprised that you know everyone? But he shouldn't be surprised, because, I mean, if Whit knows like this high up government connection, I'd be surprised, but he literally runs like a Christian charity organization, like, so that does like charity work.
That one makes like, more sense for Whit to know too.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Whit, I'd probably know lots of like homeless shelter and drug abuse directors and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It just seems weird for Eugene to be surprised at this.
Mm-hmm. It's also weird though that what's his name? Phil Proctor. Proctor. That he plays another Don here. Like he's Don Winters, and then later when he joined RC again in like the Green Ring Conspiracy, he's like Don Polehouse.
Yeah, although I think this is Don Winters' like only episode.
Yeah.
I can check just a sec.
But he's actually been in a lot of episodes. Like I was looking at it.
Oh
earlier.
No, he's in A New Era Part 2. Don Winters.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, but we're not doing those episodes.
No,
because those were lame episodes.
A little bit compared to the top 4, especially.
Yeah, I have a whole list of episodes we're gonna do after these, and some of them are pretty fun. So, oh boy, yeah. Anyway, moving on. So we're in the Solid Ground Homeless Shelter. Again, these are great names for all charities. You know, like Around the World Missions, the best name for a missions organization ever. Solid Ground Homeless Shelter. It's like, wow, these are perfect names. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, they go in, and it's so Dawn and Wit kind of like, they're like, hey, it's nice to see you again, da da da. And Dawn's like, oh, all the homeless shelter residents are looking forward to the dinner at Wit's End tonight. Which is it's nice for Wit to do this dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And then Wit introduces Dawn to Eugene, and then Eugene tells him that they want to know some information about Joel. And Dawn Winters, she's like, oh yes, Joel, a man of very few words, very few possessions. And then he tells them that Joel first came here over a year ago, and Joel moves around a lot, and like he'll be here a week and gone a month. It's like, whoa, where does he go to? Like, I don't know. I guess he's hiding from Dalton Kern.
I guess.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just like hiding from Dalton Kern somewhere.
Well, that's true.
I don't know.
Another weird thing about that too is that if he was so afraid and like the undeniable truth about Dalton Kern coming and getting him, like, why is he out on a park bench in the middle of Odyssey?
That is a very good point.
Like, the homeless shelter I get, but
yeah, that's a very good point. I don't know. It's weird. So, yeah, and then I don't know. Maybe Leonard's like going with another archaeologist friend of his, who's just like vowed to secrecy. I don't know.
But he doesn't really seem like he doesn't ever talk about any friends that he's had or anything like that.
I mean, maybe he just keeps like rotating on the park bench and the homeless shelter. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, and then Dawn tells them that's like, he's been here 3 weeks, like this is a record, and Eugene's like, oh, he's here. And Dawn's like, oh yeah, sure is. And then, so they're like, can we see him? And he's like, oh sure, come this way. And so then we transition to a commercial break, and then transition back. And and they're in luck, Joel's there, and he's sleeping. And then Wit is just the worst in this scene, because he's like, hey Joel, there's some people here to see you. And then Wit's like, yeah, we want to talk to you about Leonard Meltsner. Which is just the worst thing for Wit to say, like right off the bat. Mm-hmm. It's like, we want to talk to you about Leonard Meltsner. And the guy, which if you listen to it over, you can definitely tell it's Phil Proctor, Leonard Meltsner. Mm-hmm. He's like, I gotta go. And then he just like proceeds to run out. Mm-hmm. And then like Wit and Eugene start running after him. And then we transition to the next scene on Connellsville Street. And so it's Wit and Eugene running after him, and they've lost him because they're apparently not in shape like they used to be.
Nope.
And Wit mentions Connie's diet from Do or Diet, which is funny. He's like, oh, I need to get back on Connie's diet again.
That's a good episode, too.
Yeah, that is actually a good episode. I just listened to it because I was bored. Yeah, we should do that one sometime.
Yeah, that'd be a fun one.
Yeah, that would. But anyway, so Eugene is disappointed and his glasses are fogged up, and so he takes them off. And they're close to a cemetery, and so Eugene's like presumably rubbing his glasses with like a spray or something, and then Wit's like, oh my, no, and then Eugene's like, what? And Wit's like, look, under that oak tree. And then Eugene puts on his glasses and he's like, acorns. Duh.
Nice one, Eugene.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing for Eugene. It's like, Eugene, look, acorns. Ah! It's like, what?
Like, you'd think that someone who's doing calculus in their crib could see a name on a tombstone.
Yeah, it's like, he's doing calculus 1 minute and he's like so smart yet so dumb.
Yeah, I know.
So Wit notices. So he's like acorns, and it's like, no, Eugene. Look at that tombstone, and Eugene's like, oh yes, hire Meltsner. I know about that tombstone. Which like, Eugene, it's not hire Meltsner. There's another one. And Eugene's like, Thelma Meltsner, my mom. And then Eugene starts freaking out. He's like, why is she here? Why is she here? Why is she here? And then Wit's like, Eugene! And Eugene he's like not hearing Wit. He's like, this doesn't make sense. And then Wit's like, Eugene! And Eugene's like, yeah? What?
Stay on focus.
Yeah, he really is. And then Wit's like, Eugene, your name is written on one of those tombstones.
What?
Rest in peace, Eugene Meltsner.
And then that's like the end of that scene.
That
like
scene.
Cuts.
It's actually pretty creepy if you think of it, seeing your name on one of those tombstones, on a tombstone.
Well, like Bernard mentions
that. Yeah, that was in, what's it called?
Last of the Long Line.
Last in the Long Line.
Yeah.
That wasn't a promo. Just imagine seeing your name on one of these tombstones. Da-da-da-da-da.
They just were inspired by that, so they stuck it in there later.
Except, it was Meltsner. This is Eugene Meltsner.
That's
that
true.
one was Garvey Hire Meltsner.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So then we cut from that scene and we cut back to the cemetery again. And Eugene is just freaking out. He's like, why would someone do this? And then Wit's like, hey, there's another one for an Everett Meltsner.
Wit's just so
And Eugene's
observant, though, in the scene. Like,
oh, yeah. And Eugene is just so not observant.
yeah. So oblivious.
Yeah. He's just oblivious to everything. And Eugene's like, Everett Meltsner? I don't know who that is, because, like, he studied his family history well, and it's, like, weird to him. I don't know.
Well, we do.
Yeah. I feel like Everett Meltsner in Adventures in Odyssey is just so, like, underused. Like, he has so much potential as Eugene's brother, but, you know.
They should have, like, done more stuff with him.
They really should have. And I think I recorded a call and sent it to them for one of their director Q&A podcasts, but we'll see if that gets put in, because that would be cool.
It would.
To have Everett Meltsner. But anyway, so Wit notices the date on Eugene's tombstone, and according to this date, Eugene died when he was 7 years old, and Wit is so observant, just as you mentioned, you know?
Yeah, it just automatically connects the dots.
And then Eugene puts the dots together. No, Wit doesn't do it. Eugene does it first. Eugene's like, oh my, that means my father believed I died in the crash. Duh, Eugene, we all knew that. We all knew that. Your father loves you, he just thinks you're dead. Duh. And so, yeah, his father believed Eugene died in the train crash Michael died in. And so Eugene realizes that his father still loves him, and he hasn't, like, hated him for the bathtub incident.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Wit suggests that they go back to the homeless shelter. He's like, maybe Don Winters can tell us something. We cut. We go to Don Winters, sounding just like Don Polehouse, saying, Gentlemen, I don't know anything more about Joel. And he just sounds so much like Don Polehouse in this scene.
It's true.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like his first line, it's like, whoa, that's just like Don Polehouse in the Green Ring Conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds so uncannily like, Don Polehouse. It's like, whoa, wow.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay, so he didn't even know Joel's last name, which is weird because, first of all, in most homeless shelters, you have to give, like, a name, even if it's a fake name, but, like, a full name.
Mm-hmm. You can't just
and
be
second
like,
of all,
I'm Joel.
Joel literally told Don Winters his whole backstory. He was in Africa. His wife and kids died in Africa. And he was on the run from a ruthless archaeologist. But he didn't even tell him, like, a fake last name.
Yeah.
Like, and second of all, Don doesn't tell Wit and Eugene this information that he's previously learned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Eugene knew that Joel had been in Africa for, like, a long time, why wouldn't he tell Wit and Eugene this information, you know?
Yeah.
It just seems really weird. And it's just, I don't know. It looks kind of bad in a writing standpoint, you know?
Also, another thing is with Joel, if Joel had been in a disguise, why did he run, like, way back? Because, like...
You mean like in a few scenes ago?
Wait, when Eugene was like, when Witz asked if for information about Leonard Meltsner, like why did he run? Because like, if he's in a good disguise, no one should really recognize him.
Yeah.
Although
maybe he's not in a... Yeah.
If it had been Dalton Kern, though, I guess he probably would have recognized him. I don't know.
We don't even know where Dalton Kern is right now, though.
That's true.
Presumably he's still in Africa. Or he's in New York with Everett. I don't know.
Well, like, this point of time in, like, the episode, he hasn't been, like, labeled as, like, a bad guy yet.
No, he has. We don't know the name. We just know the American who inspired greed with everyone else.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Which, spoiler alert, the American is Dalton Kern.
What?
We all knew that. Yeah. So, anyway. And then, so they're like, well, so after Dawn Winters tells them that he knows nothing more about Joel, they're like, well, can we look at his bunk? And Dawn is like, okay. And so they go in his bunk, and they're like, wow, like he literally only had this blanket. And then and then Wit, being the very observant man he is, he's like, wait a minute, there's a name stitched in the corner here. And then Eugene's like, he had it personalized? No, Eugene, don't be dumb. But the name isn't Joel, it's... We cut. And we hear in Grady's house, his mom saying, Grady! Which is just a perfect transition, you know? And so, we're in the name apparently is Grady on the blanket.
Mm-hmm.
And so Whit and Eugene are in Grady's house, and so they come in his room apparently, or the living room, I don't know, wherever he sleeps. And Grady just bursts out, what are you doing with my blanket? And then his mom's like, Grady, be polite. And so he's like, okay, what are you doing with my blanket? Please, which is funny. Because, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a funny line. So even Mom, her name is Christy, but she's confused, and Eugene tells them that he needs to find like this man whom the blanket belongs to, because this might have something to do with his dad. And then Grady says, this might help you find your dad. And Eugene's like, yeah. And we can just imagine this, because there's a whole story arc with Grady and his dad too, mm-hmm. in the next episodes and the next like albums. So this is kind of like a precursor to that, you know, because Grady's, I'm sure he's thinking about his dad. And
those would be good episodes to cover.
Maybe.
Like the high stakes and them, accidental dilemma.
Yeah, the highest stakes. I don't know. They're kind of sad though.
It's true.
Like with his dad. I don't know.
It might be a little bit of a downer, but
yeah, depressing. Maybe we'll see. But anyway, so Grady tells him everything, that he gave the blanket to adopt a family, and that due to Eugene's incompetence, they had it returned to them. No, they didn't say that. That would have been funny. But no, he tells him that it came back to them. Eugene doesn't seem the least bit concerned that his system isn't really working that well.
Nope.
And so they just like gave everything to the homeless guy in the park. And Eugene's like, well, did he say anything? And they're like, nah, he didn't really tell us much. And Eugene's like, no, another dead end. And then Grady, he's like, he just saves the day completely. He's like, well, why don't you just talk to him tonight? And they're like, whoa, tonight? And Grady's like, yeah, I invited him to the homeless dinner. I mean, isn't that what it's for? Where it's like, yeah, everyone's welcome, Grady.
Such a Christian thing to say right there.
Such a Christian thing. And and then we go to the next scene in a car. And at this time in the recording, I'm like, okay, there has to be like only 1 or 2 minutes left. And I'm like, oh, there's still 5 or 6 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow, this episode is like, it feels like a big episode, but it's really not.
Well, like the Chris section is honestly like 2 minutes long.
True. And then this next section is like 3 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
In the car.
Yeah.
And I obviously got kind of confused, and so my notes are kind of scattered, so you might have to help me through this one. Okay. So it's in Whit's car, and Eugene and Whit are driving, presumably from Grady's house to Whit's End.
For the dinner, yeah.
Whit mentions Connie and Nick, which I'm glad Whit mentioned Nick, because I just really wish he was in this episode.
Yeah, Nick kind of just disappeared.
Yeah. He's just working at Whit's End, and then Whit just... I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Whit just, like, quietly fired him for, like, smoking.
No, he stopped smoking. He became kind of better.
Yeah. Whit's like, you need to be a better influence on these kids, because you're not a Christian, and so I'm going to fire you. Nick's like, dang, well, I got a better job elsewhere, just like Richard Maxwell. It's my fan theory.
Oh, he's working with Richard.
Yeah. Just like RM. Okay, that didn't make sense. Anyway, it's Eugene and Whit in the car, and Eugene he doesn't want to get his hopes up, because he doesn't want to be disappointed again. Eugene thinks it's possible that Joel will show up, and Whit's like, well, he might be spooked about going to public places. Then Eugene just launches into like a huge question of his motives. Like, should he have gone down this trail? And Eugene's like, well, on the one hand, if I hadn't gone, like, started investigating Joel, like, he wouldn't have been spooked, and he wouldn't have run away, and da-da-da-da-da.
And you would have never found out anything.
Yeah, exactly. And Whit tells him that, and Eugene's like, well, I might have known. A possible sign might have converged during the evening, which... No, it wouldn't have. Eugene would never have known that was his father. Duh. Yeah, so basically Eugene worries that his actions have inadvertently hindered his progress to finding his father. And then he and Whit discuss the providence of God, and Whit tells Eugene that it is impossible for him to ruin God's plans, and assures him that everything will work out. So... basically, God's in control of all that's happening here, and you can never ruin God's plans. Mm-hmm. And I just have, that's a nice message in this time.
Yeah.
It's all, we're in God's hands. And
I did a good job with making that one kind of
but I'm talking about, like, today, like, with, like, the whole worldwide situation. Yeah. It's like, nice to be reminded that we're all in God's hands, and, this is God's timing, and we're all,
a good thing to remember, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of nice, and it's a big scene too. But I just don't have that many notes in it. And so then we go to the last scene, which is also the first scene of the next episode, or part of the first scene of the next episode, and it's Whit's End, and Eugene's scanned the room 7 times for Joel, and he can't find him. And then Grady arrives, and then Grady comes up to Eugene, and he's like, Joel's here.
Wait, why is Grady there?
Because Whit, like, in the last episode, Whit was talking to Grady a lot about this program, and I think Grady just wanted to, like, volunteer or something. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's weird. But, I don't know. Maybe Grady just wants to see Joel again, even after his mom's like, Grady, don't talk to strangers.
Probably.
Why? Because you'll understand when you're older. So bad. You'll understand when you're older why you shouldn't talk to strangers.
But, Mom!
No, Grady. Conversation's done. Don't talk to strangers. You'll understand when you're older. Okay, so Grady comes up, and he tells him that Joel's here, and Eugene runs up screaming, Joel! And then Whit's like,
that worked so well last
Eugene,
time.
Stop! Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. Wouldn't Joel have heard that? Because it was, like, loud.
Yeah.
Apparently Joel didn't hear it. And so Whit's like, Eugene, stop! He's probably spooked, And Eugene's like, oh, right, what do we do? Then Eugene almost runs to the little theater to get a costume. And then Grady's like, you're both being silly. I'll introduce you. And then Wyatt and Eugene both are like, no, Grady, no. And Grady just ignores them and walks up to Joel, which is funny.
Listen, I do what I want, okay?
Yeah. It's also really good voice acting to have, And then, so Grady goes to Joel, and Joel remembers his name, Grady, and he's like, you gave me that blanket. That was very nice of you. And and then Grady he's like, I have a friend who wants to talk to you, and Joel's like, oh? And then so he's like, so he invites Eugene over, not Wyatt, because that's the last we hear of him. Wyatt's presumably just watching from, like, the kitchen or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So Eugene comes to Joel, and Joel says, greetings, which is, like, the classic Eugene response.
Greetings and salutations.
Yeah. And Eugene's like, greetings. And Eugene still doesn't think that this might be his father.
Well, I guess looking right at him, you wouldn't think that. Like, if...
No, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's still pretty stupid, though.
It's true.
Because, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, and then, Joel gets a look at Eugene, and he's like, good heavens! You remind me of someone I used to know a long time ago. And then Eugene's like, oh, that would have been Leonard Meltsner, right? And then Leonard Meltzner's like, Joel's like, what? You know the Meltsners? And then Eugene's like, well, yes. And then Eugene, he just like starts rambling on about his whole story again. Like, he's looking for his father, and he believes that his father thinks he died in a train crash, and he's been looking for him forever. And Leonard Meltsner's like in a state of shock, basically.
Yeah.
Then Eugene asked him if he could help him find his father. Oh, Eugene asked him if he knows his father. Mm-hmm. And I have it written down that Eugene doesn't consider that his father might be Joel. It's so annoying listening to it. Eugene just does not, he doesn't consider all the possibilities. But anyway, Joel says that he knows Leonard Meltsner. He is Leonard Meltsner! Gasp.
Yeah.
And that's where the episode goes off on.
Yep, that's the end of part 2.
Yeah.
And then they carry on at the first episode of Into the Light.
Yeah. That was good episodes. I enjoyed them.
Yeah. A
lot better than Prisoners of Fear.
For sure.
And Dead Ends was okay, but these ones were pretty good. Mm-hmm. Then, yeah. And then there's the Chris wrap-up, and I have a few notes about the Chris wrap-up. So, so the Bible verse she does is Daniel 4:35, which I didn't write the Bible verse down, but I could Google it. Just a sec. And while I'm doing that, I'll just talk about the other things. So basically, the Chris wrap-up is about God's provision. Lots of people think that God only has one plan for their life, but they don't realize that the mistakes they made don't affect God's plan. And so basically, as long as we seek God, we can be a part of His will, and God isn't surprised when we aren't perfect. Mm-hmm. Is basically the summary. And so it's good. Oh, and so I have the Bible verse. And so basically, it says, Daniel 4:35 says, all the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of this earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, what have you done? So.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of a weirder Bible verse.
Weird choice for that one. But
yeah, I don't know. It is. There's probably better Bible verses for this context, but I mean, I guess it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, that is this episode. Mm-hmm. Do you have any closing thoughts about this episode, Devon?
Mostly just that it's one of the better ones, but
yeah, I'm just happy that we're this far into the saga, and I'm really looking forward to the top floor.
Yeah, only 2 more episodes, I think, before the top floor.
Yeah, and yeah, my closing thoughts is that it's a good episode. I'd rate it 4 out of 5 stars. So, there was a few congruency timeline issues.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, but I mean, for the most part, it was good. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed Eugene, his conclusion that he came to, that And yeah, I think it's good that they introduced Leonard Meltsner in the end of this episode to get people interested.
Well,
And
definitely grab more people for the next album.
Yeah. So, yeah. But before we go, do you want to kind of talk about our podcast here for like a little while?
What about
Just
it?
kind of, well, kind of how we're going to go forward with the podcast.
Yeah. So we're gonna do mostly just whenever we can actually have time to record.
Yeah.
The whole pandemic.
It'll be more in the summer probably, but I'm sure we will still make time like in the next school year to do this too.
Yeah. The whole pandemic kind of makes things interesting for trying to record, because we have to do this over
Google
Google Hangouts, and it's just a lot more difficult than if we were both together. So
yeah, it is. And there's been quite a few technical issues we've had, and so far we have prevailed. Also, sometimes Devon won't be with me.
No,
because he has other stuff to do. But I think for the most part you're going to be there.
probably.
Yeah. And so I'm just glad I finally have a co-host now.
Yeah, definitely makes things more interesting to have kind of more of a discussion than just talking about it. So
Yeah, then just a commentary. It does. And I'm glad we're doing this, and I can't wait to see what episodes we get into for the future. Yeah, so anyway, so the next episode is kind of we're really getting into the Leonard Meltsner Saga. It is, wait a minute. Wait.
Cover of Darkness.
Cover of Darkness. Why did I forget that I owned that episode? And so Cover of Darkness is kind of the start where all the action starts. And Cover of Darkness is episode 596. And that's what we're going to be discussing next episode.
Yep.
So, anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so.
All right, then. With that ending, I'm going to say, see you next time.
Adios.